House Bill 303 is designed to, in my estimation and what I've learned, is we're going to close a loophole in the DUI law. In the state of Utah, we have a current DUI law that says that if you're in physical control of a car in the state of Utah, and if you're over .08, you're considered to be DUI in the state of Utah. There is another component, however, that says or, and that or would be if you're in, it says if you are under the influence of alcohol and or drugs and operating a motor vehicle, or under the influence of alcohol and or drugs and operating a vehicle in an unsafe manner, something to that effect, that you're DUI. So what we found is the officers are now going into court and they're saying, look, I pulled this person over and they're under the influence of alcohol because they're a .04, but they also took some type of a drug to go with their alcohol, and so they're actually impaired. But then what's happening is they're saying, well, why did you stop them? Well, I stopped them for a taillight being out or a headlight being out. And they're saying, well, did you see a driving pattern? Were they driving in an unsafe manner when you stopped them? Well, no, the taillight was out. That's why I stopped them. And I didn't see any unsafe driving in that short period of time, and so I stopped them. Well, they're saying, well, you don't have the second element to the crime, so therefore, even though my client will capitulate, he was probably impaired or under the influence, but because you didn't have him with any kind of unsafe driving, we're arguing that he should be let go or she should be let go. So what we're trying to do is change that definition, and we're following some samples from other states. Vermont, Arkansas, Idaho, Arizona all have similar language either in their laws or in their already court cases to fit this need. And what it is, they've said if you're impaired to the slightest degree by alcohol and or drugs to render yourself incapable of driving a motor vehicle safely, then you're considered to be DUI. And that's what we're attempting to do in this bill. Is to
there is some ambiguity to the wording, though. Slightest degree. I mean, are you looking to redefine?
Nope. There's really no. It sounds like there's ambiguity in that word, but there's really not. Impairment is actually the key to this thing. It's not the slightest. It's impairment. Where does impairment start? And that's really the key to this. Under the influence, I could be under the influence of Diet Coke or aspirin right now, but I'm not impaired by that. So impairment is really the key to this, because people could be under the influence of a lot of things, but are they impaired by those things? You can't be impaired by Diet Coke. You're not going to be impaired by aspirin. You're not going to be impaired by tryptophan or whatever, those things. The things we're talking about are impairment by drugs and alcohol. And so that's really the key. And when we start to say impaired, I can be under the influence of alcohol with one beer. I can drink one beer and technically I am under the influence to some degree of alcohol. But I am not impaired by alcohol with one beer in my system. I can still operate, and I've actually, as a police officer, I've actually stopped people who've been under the influence of alcohol because they've had one beer, but they were not impaired, and they went down the road. So I look at this as this is actually a good thing for our citizens, because we won't be arresting people who might be under the influence but are not impaired. The purpose behind our law was always to be driving while impaired and taking impaired drivers off the road and protecting the public from impaired drivers, not drivers who might be just under the influence.